Hey, it's Rod Yates. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. Each episode, I talk to a music creator or industry professional about their life and career, the ups and downs of their journey, and the lessons they've learned. And my special guest today is singer-songwriter Sasha Alex Sloan. Songwriting has been a part of Sasha's life for a long time. As a kid, she might have been struggling at school, but she'd come home and be able to focus and dedicate hours to playing and writing music. Through a series of hilarious events which we talk about in this interview, she got a publishing deal with Warner Chappell Music and moved from Boston to LA at the age of 19. It took years, but the songwriting credits started to mount up. At this point, Sasha has written songs with artists like Camila Cabello, Charlie XCX, Juice WRLD, Lanny, Steve Aoki, and many more, all the while focusing on her solo career. And while we talk about that whole journey in this interview, we start with that solo career and her latest album, I Blame the World. I've seen you talk about the fact that when you were making these songs, you were conscious of the fact that you wanted them to create this world where they would make sense together. Does that suggest that there's a concept to the record?
Yeah, actually, this is the first time that I've ever sat down and had a concept for a project. I think I come from the songwriting world, and with that came just, let me just get the best songs I can and my favorite songs and compile them all together. And with this album, I really wanted there to feel like a theme, especially with what I was feeling. And at first, I thought, I can't just have 10 songs about being depressed. And then I was like, well, people have 12-song albums about breakups, so yeah, I can. And once I realized that, I kind of all just started to come together. And I Blame the World, the title track, was actually the first song that I wrote that felt like the start of something, and it really became the centerpiece for the rest of the album.
And that's that statement, I blame the world. Did that sum up everything you were thinking? That idea you were just talking then about, that concept about being depressed, to be able to go, I blame the world. Was there something that was quite cathartic about that?
Absolutely. I think I keep saying on socials, I'm Sad Girl Sloan. And I keep saying that this album is Mad Girl Sloan.
Right.
And I think obviously that was inspired by COVID, and everyone was locked down and going through this shared experience across the world, which is, I think, something that's extremely unique to everyone, no matter what generation you've grown up in. And yeah, I think I just got really angry, and I'm also getting older. You know, when I started putting music out, I was 21, 22, and now I'm 27. And I really feel like so much growth happens in those years. And I started looking less inward and more outward. And I think the culmination of all of those things led to this album.
And you've got the song on the record, of course, called Adult.
I do.
It's got that great line, it finally hurts being hungover, but it's still not worse than being sober. And yeah. I think anyone who's got a little bit older can particularly relate with that first line, it finally hurts being hungover. So there's real relatability to that. And when you look at that line as well, it just looks very simple. It's a really great rhyme, but there's clearly an art to be able to sum up that sort of sentiment in that plain spoken way.
Well, thank you.
In terms of your lyrical inspirations, who did you look to help shape your lyrical writing like that?
Growing up, I listened to a lot of Amy Winehouse. She's my favorite artist in the world. And I also listened to a lot of Lily Allen. She's always had incredibly sharp lyrics. Regina Spektor. I'm also a huge fan of The Killers, Coldplay. And yeah, I would say that I am lyric obsessed, sometimes to a fault. I'm never one of those writers that can I'm like, this is a vibe. I'm not good at that. I'm very type A when it comes to my writing, for better or worse, So yeah, I thank you for saying that. I don't disagree, because I think, the best songs in the world are simple, but it's finding that balance of being simple while also trying to say something profound. Not even always, but just saying something that doesn't sound corny.
Right. Yeah.
While keeping it simple that's always the hardest for me. So Thank you.
No, you're welcome. And I think you've also spoken about the song I Hate Myself, and you've said that was the hardest song on the album to write. Is that an example of that dedication to lyrics and that attention to lyrics and trying to sum up that emotion, but again, not make it twee or corny, but still make it powerful?
Yeah, I think with I Hate Myself, every time I say that title, I just have to laugh. For me, I've always had that title on my phone and I've wanted to write it for so long. And it went through, I think, like 6 or 7 versions. And every time I just knew it wasn't right because sonically it had to be light and airy. Otherwise, it was just like a very odd lyric with a depressing guitar under it. Just wasn't the vibe.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that song does have a sense of humor. And it's said with a sense of humor, you know, like I hate myself and my self-deprecating sense of humor is kind of my defense mechanism. And so I felt like that was a really important song on the album for me to have. And when we finally nailed the lyric and the sonics of that, I was just really excited about it.
How long did that take to get that lyric right?
Like a year.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it went through a lot of revisions because I was like, what's the catch here? You know, like I knew I had no one can hate me more than I hate myself. But I was like, what's the story here?
Mm. Yeah.
And once I figured it out, I was pretty excited about it.
Well, you've mentioned that self-deprecating humor in there. And I think it's really interesting because the song opens with that line, I wear a sweater to the beach, I'm paler than a vampire, which is a very funny opening line. But then as you mentioned later on in the song, there's nothing you can do to make me hate me more than I hate myself. So that idea of using humor, is it a case of self-defense, but also making the medicine go down a little easier for the listener? Is that why how you use humor as a writing mechanism?
Yeah, I think for me, I have such a hard time talking about anything serious. I have a hard time being serious. Right. I get like immediate panic attacks when someone's mad at me or, you know, when there's like a heavy conversation that needs to be had. And I think the way that I express myself is through music. And for some reason, when I sing about how I'm actually feeling, it's much easier to do that than to just have a conversation about it. I think therapy would be a lot better for me if they let me sing. But yeah, I think I am a sad girl, quote, but I think I also have a lot of humor and like that is my self-defense mechanism.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make that, I wanted to have more fun on this record and kind of, you know, just show that side of me. Because I think, you know, artists, people are multifaceted. And I think it's easy to box yourself in. So I wanted to allow myself to explore that area. Like Lily Allen did. I mean, she had really funny lyrics. And that's why I love her writing.
Right. When do you think you developed that humor as a self-defense mechanism?
Oh, I can't remember. It's been ages.
Right. It's been around a long time.
I think I may have been born that way. My mom is that way.
Okay.
Where she will definitely just, if she's uncomfortable, crack a joke, or she's the best person in the world and the most likable person in the world. I think it's always because she's making jokes about herself.
Right.
And so that's just kind of how I grew up.
Fair enough.
And I think it's important to laugh at yourself because if you can't, life's going to be tough.
Absolutely. There is an optimism to the album, though, in some of the songs, such as Global Warming, for example, where if I've understood the song correctly, you're acknowledging that the world is burning and it's a pretty scary place, but you also have someone's love to rely on. Is that the meaning of that song? And is that optimism something which is new to your songwriting?
Yeah, I guess it is relatively new. I think that was the weirdest thing going into this album was feeling very, very depressed while also in this great, healthy, committed relationship. And so as I took a step back, I kind of realized, especially during the pandemic, what really propels people during hard times is the people they love and the people that love them back. And that was something that I really wanted to write about on this record without being too gushy about it. Because it's hard for me to just sit down and write like a love song. So, of course, I had to talk about the planet burning at the same time. But yeah, you know, it's that thing of, wow, I have a lot of anxiety and I'm very scared of everything. But this person kind of keeps me on the right track. And it's good to like pull back sometimes and not look at the big picture because I'm bad at that.
Right. Do you think you were a different person at the end of this album as opposed to when you started writing it?
I don't know if I was a different person, but I would say I was in a very different place. Just because I could go to a bar again.
Right.
You know, I could just start living life again. And I think that was the hardest part of making this record was not having those interactions that I used to have and you're used to having. I think it's a lot harder to get inspired when you're not going to a restaurant and you hear someone say something and you're like, oh, that could be a song. And there were no new TV shows,
Right.
So I couldn't pull any cool ideas from TV shows or anyway. So yeah, I think I felt a lot differently when it came out than I did when I started writing it. But I think I'm the same cynical person I was at the beginning of the journey.
So there were no great life-changing revelations as you kind of had this catharsis?
No, unfortunately not. I wish I could say yes.
I guess one of the things as well that you had to deal with during the lockdowns was the fact that you put out your debut album, Only Child, and then didn't get the opportunity to tour it because that record came out in 2020. So
right.
Was that that had to have been quite heartbreaking? I mean, obviously there were a lot of issues which everyone was dealing with during that time, but to put out your debut album is a very special moment, and to not get the opportunity to take it on the road, that must have been hard to deal with. Was that the case for you?
Yeah, it was kind of like I worked so hard towards something and then it was just out. And, I was getting nice DMs on Instagram and comments on YouTube, and my friends were saying they really liked it. But, you can look at streams on a computer, but, like what's, 100,000 versus a million, it's just a zero, and then when you go play it live, that's when you really see people connecting to it and people singing the words back at you. And it was definitely tough for me to go into album 2 without having even toured album 1, because I was kind of like, what's the point, And I was in a really bad place with music too. I was kind of not inspired. I stopped writing, and so yeah, it was definitely tough. But I'm excited to tour it.
You'll be touring 2 albums at once, I guess.
I know, right? And I think also not getting to tour that album weirdly helped this album, because I listened back to the first album with fresh ears about a year after, and I was kind of like, this is going to be a slow live show.
Right.
And I think going into album 2, I wanted to make sure that the slow moments in the show were moments and the rest of the show was more fun.
Sure.
So yeah, it was a blessing and a curse at the same time, I guess you could say.
Right. Well, how long did it take you to, I don't know if pick yourself up is the right word, but pick yourself up from the disappointment of not being able to tour it to then go, all right, I'm going to make album number 2?
I don't know if there was a moment. I think I was just like, what else am I going to do? So it was more that attitude than, I'm really excited to write this. But yeah, it was a process. It was a journey, but we got there.
Right. Okay. You mentioned earlier some of the your love of Amy Winehouse, and I think I've seen you speak about Jewel as well with someone else that you loved.
Yeah.
And I understand that your parents divorced quite young, so you lived with your mum, and she was quite, I guess, almost responsible for your music taste because you would be hearing your mother's music. Were they the artists that she was playing in the house?
Yeah, my mom has great taste in music. She loves Brandi Carlile, introduced me to her very, very early. I've been seeing her live my whole life.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm so excited for her to finally be reaching a huge audience because she so deserves it. She was a huge inspiration for me growing up. My mom bought me her first CD, and I think everyone's parents have some influence on their music taste, whether they like it or not.
Right.
And I didn't have any older siblings going, this is cool, you know? So I was kind of stuck in like whatever my mom listened to, the Carpenters, Jewel. And of course I went through my Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera phase.
Sure.
But yeah, the best thing my mom ever did for me was buy me a computer, and she learned GarageBand and taught me how to use it. And she went, I think you're really good at this music thing. You should try it. And I was always like, oh, I don't know anyone in the music business. I'll never make it. And so she's the one who really pushed me to try. And she's been like my biggest fan since day one. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Was she musical as well? Did she have aspirations musically herself?
She was in a band when she was a teenager.
Okay. So
I think she has a great voice. She would deny it, but she does have a great voice. And my whole family, my mom's whole side of the family absolutely loves music. So it was always playing. Everyone was always like holding an instrument, but no one did it professionally.
So how old were you when your mom bought you that computer?
I was probably 13.
Okay.
I remember being in middle school and just being in math class, writing down lyrics instead of paying attention and then going home and trying to make a song out of it. And my grades reflected that. That's for sure.
What did your school report say about you?
I think like the teachers really liked me and just felt bad for me because I was a horrible student.
Right.
So I think some teachers passed me when they shouldn't have.
Okay.
But yeah, school was not for me.
Right.
I don't thrive in structure, that's for sure.
But your mum also bought you a piano as well.
Yeah, she did.
Prior to the computer. How old are you? Was that a few years earlier? Like, how old were you when she did that?
Yeah, we lived in Boston, in the city, and she got a piano off Craigslist. And I mean, it had been in our apartment for as long as I can remember, and I was just probably annoying the crap out of everyone around me, trying to learn how to play it.
Right.
But yeah, it had always been, I bought some chord books and like taught myself how to play piano. I tried taking piano lessons, but like I said, the student in me was not quite there.
Right.
But yeah, I don't mean to paint my mom out as a stage mom or anything, because it wasn't like that. You know, there was never any pressure to do it. It was just always encouragement, which, you know, I think I'm so fortunate to have that, because I think a lot of people who want to pursue music, their parents aren't supportive. And I've seen that. And it's a really sad thing, you know?
No, I wasn't getting the picture of a stage mom at all. I just thought someone was
Okay,
very supportive, which sounds absolutely
just got to
lovely.
defend my mom out here. If she hears this, she'll be like, you made me sound like a stage mom.
And I think you said that one of the chord books you bought was a Queen chord book. What was it?
Yes.
What was it about Queen's music that drew you to it?
So my best friend, Kara, growing up, she is the coolest person ever.
Right.
And just knows every song that's ever been written. And she showed me all the cool music that I knew. And Queen was one of them. She was obsessed with Queen. And then I became obsessed with Queen and Freddie Mercury and the whole thing. And I just, yeah. And their songs are so theatrical, and I loved musical theater as well. So I think subconsciously it was like a great blend of musical theater meets pop music. It was just, I just love them.
Yeah. What do you remember the satisfaction that you would get from learning a song? Because, you know, as you mentioned there, school wasn't for you, you know, you weren't that focused on learning at school, but there must have been a huge satisfaction level when you would sit down at the piano and learn a Queen song or a song from someone else. That must have been really, really important to you, I imagine.
100%. It was the only thing that I would spend hours on. And I think looking back, you know, anytime I meet a new songwriter, I think it's really important for anyone who wants to write songs to learn a million songs, you know, that have been proven to reach a lot of people, because like whether you know it or not, you're learning tricks and chords and melodies and maybe things you wouldn't originally write on your own. So I still try to like play piano every now and then and pick up a different chord book and just see what they were doing.
Yeah, right. So there are still probably lessons that you learned back then that you apply to your writing now, I imagine.
100%, whether I've known it or not.
Right. And so it's interesting that you had this. So you're in this apartment in Boston and you're learning to play piano.
Mm-hmm.
But if I understand as well, you would also have, because your father was from Siberia, so you would spend the summers in Siberia. Is that also the case?
Yes, that is also the case.
What was that like? What are your memories of going to Siberia, and how old were you?
I was pretty young, but I remember a lot of it because it was so different. And yeah, we'd fly to Moscow, we'd take the Trans-Siberian Railroad to my grandparents' village. And my dad came from Siberia. The way that my mom met my dad was she was in the Gulf War in the army.
Okay.
And then she was an interrogator, learned the Russian language.
Wow.
Moved to Russia afterwards to become properly fluent and learn the culture. Met my dad. Oops, I was born. But you know, glad it happened. And yeah, I mean, it's so different. They don't have running water, you know, because it's too cold for pipes to exist. Yeah. So you just survive. And it was fascinating to have that perspective and see that part of the world. And then growing up in, you know, a first world country with, an iPhone and I have a computer. And it's like, well, don't take that for granted because a lot of the world doesn't have that.
Yeah.
So it was It's cool. I mean, it's a different culture and it's a different style of life, but it's almost better because it's so simple.
Sure. But it must have opened your eyes to the fact that there was a big world outside of Boston.
Oh, absolutely. That's the thing my dad did really well, is make me see the world. He loves traveling. He thinks it's super important, and I don't disagree.
Right. Just quickly on your mum's work in the Gulf War, has she ever spoken to you about the things that she would have to do there, or told you about her experiences there at all?
Yeah, but mostly like funny stories, as
Okay.
my mom would. Like, I guess every week someone was responsible for disposing of waste. And I think they would just set it on fire or something. And she had like a problem with that once. And I mean, she has some pretty gnarly stories from her time there.
Yeah.
But my mom's a school teacher. She's incredibly structured. And I think the military just gave her that discipline that I certainly don't have.
Right. But it's interesting. Again, you mentioned that some of the stories she's told you have that humorous angle to it, which harks back to what you were talking about at the beginning, that idea of, I guess, the juxtaposition between dark times with humor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the best way to cope, for me at least.
We'll be back with more from Sasha after this break. Welcome back to Humans of Music, my interview with Sasha Alex Sloan. So you're writing songs as a teenager. What is that providing you? What is it? Is it solace, that idea that you can go home and you've got this canvas on which to work? Was that what songwriting provided you with?
Yeah, I think I didn't really know what I was doing, if I had to be honest.
Sure.
I just knew that I loved it. And I remember I always loved to sing. That was the first thing that got me into music. And I was in a school talent show when I was 9 or 10, and I was going to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And I had just written this song called Pitter Patter.
Wow.
About stubbing my toe and crying about it.
Yeah. Relatable.
Yeah, looking back, not the worst idea. And my mom really encouraged me to play that instead of singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And it got such a great response, probably because I was 10 years old and singing an original song.
Yeah.
But it really encouraged me to keep writing my own songs instead of singing other people's songs.
Yeah.
And I kind of just fell in love with it ever since. And I just kept writing song after song after song. And yeah, I think that's where it started.
And the fact that you were good at it, again, talking of, what you mentioned with your schoolwork, well, here was something that you're actually really good at, and people were acknowledging that. Again, that must have been really powerful.
It was. I think it was like the one thing that I had. And then I started realizing, people would be like, oh, you're the singer girl, right? Like, you have a great voice. And I was like, yeah, but what'd you think of the song,
Right.
It kind of turned into that for me. I'm also fortunate. I know we're talking about my mom a lot, but, my mom is a school teacher, but she's a great teacher because she knows that not every kid is good at school, but that doesn't mean you're not smart. And I think she was really good at seeing that. I'm not saying that I'm smart, but, I think just trying to allow grace for kids who aren't good at math, but are really passionate about something else, and encouraging that even though you're in a system where, test results are it. So I had a lot of support from her on my low GPA.
Was there anyone else
Whoops.
was there anyone else who was an encouraging figure that either heard some of your songs or saw you performing and just gave you that that confidence, that idea of, you're good at this, you should keep going?
Yeah, I think, my family was awesome. My friends were also really supportive and came to all my open mics and shows I would do locally. And I think I was the one who doubted myself the most. I've always been this cynical kind of person, and I always looked at music as my outlet. I never thought that I could do it for a living, just coming where I come from and not knowing anyone in the industry. It just seemed like an uphill battle. And I knew, even when I was 16, that I didn't want to be playing bars my whole life, local bars. I just knew that wasn't for me. And I thought that that's all that I would be able to do. So I kind of gave up on it at a certain point professionally.
Really?
And then, and then Berklee College of Music was kind of the only school I got into without being on academic probation.
What does that mean? That your grades have to be good?
Yeah, I got into Belmont in Nashville, Tennessee. They have an amazing songwriting program. And I got into that. And they were like, but you have to maintain a C average or else we're going to kick you out.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know if I'm capable of that. I will try. So that scared me a bit. So then I just went to Berkeley because they gave me a little scholarship, which was helpful. And that kind of encouraged me to go there.
What did you study there?
So I only went for a year. So I was going to study songwriting. You declare your major the second year, but I didn't make it that far. Clearly school is not my thing.
But it turned out okay, because I think
it worked out.
There's that very famous story of, I guess, why you left Berkeley after 1 year, and it's that fact. And correct me if I get this wrong, but your parents were painting their house, and they painted an arrow to your window and wrote the words "dork," which is such a great joke. But you took a photo of it and later ended up putting it up on Reddit, where it went viral. And then in the comment section on Reddit, you put the link to your SoundCloud account, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah. You're killing it.
And then Warner Chappell hears your music, gets in touch and offers you a publishing deal.
Yep.
What a crazy stream of events. What were you thinking when you got that call from them?
I was, I guess, flabbergasted is the only word I can think of. But no, I was like, what does this even mean? I was like, I didn't even know songwriting for other people was a career option. I just thought you write for yourself. So I was offered a publishing deal and they were like, you have to move to LA. And I was 19. I was a freshman in college. I didn't know anyone in LA. I barely knew how to drive a car or pay a bill. And by barely, I mean, I didn't. And I just said, okay, I feel like this is a one in a lifetime opportunity. So I dropped out of school and moved. And it was really hard. Just even, I mean, the songwriting aspect of it was hard, but also just being away from all my friends who were still in college. And I was like alone in a new city. I wasn't even old enough to go to a bar. And like trying to figure out what like a gas bill was.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, why is my electricity turned off? And I was like, oh, you have to pay for that. So just, learning a lot of huge life lessons at once, while simultaneously trying to figure out if dropping out of school was the biggest mistake I ever made.
Right. So no pressure.
Yeah, it was a lot at once, but we figured it out.
But how did you figure it out? Because you look at your career now and you look at your songwriting resume and working with artists like Camila Cabello and Charlie XCX, and you go, well, that makes sense. You had to deal with Warner Chappell, you wrote songs and they became popular. But it's not that simple. You had to arrive in LA and navigate your way into rooms and figure out how the business works. How did you do that? What's even the first step that you take?
So I had someone at Warner Chappell who was awesome and really great to me and believed in me as a new signee with no cuts, zero leverage. I feel like nowadays, do you watch Shark Tank?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So how like when Shark Tank started, people would just come in with like an unproven concept and they'd be like, I love that idea. And they'd just invest in it. Yep. And now the show is like, oh, you haven't made $1 million yet? I feel like the industry when I joined was more like first season of Shark Tank. And now it's more like season 15 of Shark Tank where you have to be proven. Yeah. So I got very lucky to have been picked like a needle in a haystack, essentially.
Wow.
And when I moved to LA, I objectively was not a strong songwriter. I think I had strong instincts and lyrical ideas. But as far as writing like a great song start to finish that could actually work, on radio or whatever, I was not there. And I really wanted to be an artist. I really believed that I was an artist.
Right.
And so I had a great publisher. She started putting me in a bunch of different sessions and all of them went okay, right. Because I didn't really know what I was doing. And I went from writing all my songs alone to suddenly being in co-writes where there's so much give and take and so much collaboration. And I think when I was 19, I had a bit of an ego because I was like, well, this is my idea and this is the way I want to say it.
Yeah.
And I don't like your idea. Even though in hindsight, their idea was way better, you know? So just learning how to become a co-writer was like the first 2 years of me living in LA. And then I started working in a coffee shop because I ran out of money.
Yeah.
And so I would wake up at 5 a.m, work till noon, and then I would go to a session at 1, work till 6 or 7 and do it all again.
Wow.
And I was pretty exhausted, and I hit a pretty bad breaking point about 3 years in because not much was happening. I hadn't gotten a cut, and I was just so exhausted. I was lonely. And then I read this article, and it was a CEO of a publishing company. And he said, the best writers I know are the ones that don't quit. And that really stuck with me. And I held on to that. And then I just, kind of took a step back and went, how can I become a better writer? Why are my songs not getting cut? What's wrong with them? Dissecting them. And then I started slowly moving up into bigger, better rooms. And I'd meet a writer who knows an artist and they'd bring me in. And it started to happen very organically. But it took a long time.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many years do you think it was before you started to get that kind of trajectory?
It probably took 4 years of me writing straight 2 songs, maybe a day, for me to start feeling like I was at least inching forward.
Wow.
So it was a journey.
Yeah. And I mean, did you consider giving up? Was Boston looking really attractive at some point?
Absolutely. I was also in a long distance relationship at the time. And I was I just missed home. I missed my family. I missed my boyfriend at the time. And I was having a hard time making friends. So I think personally, it was almost harder than it was professionally. But then I just, gave it some time. And I think, a lot of people, myself included, think that success is just a straight line. And it's really not. It's really not.
What was the first cut that you got? What was the credit that you got that made you think, all right, maybe this is going to be okay?
Okay, so I think it was with this DJ Cascade.
Right.
And I wrote a song called Phoenix, and he liked it and he wanted to keep my vocal on it. And I was just like, what? He wants to keep my voice on it? This is so cool.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of my first cuts ever, like with a major label. And I just remember how cool that felt. And, I always say like the highs are so high and the lows are so low. There's really no like just steady, I'm going to work feeling ever.
Yeah.
But I think that was something that was awesome for me. And it just like, it also validated me in a way because finally someone legit liked a song that I wrote and liked my voice. So it was like, it was an important moment for me.
Yeah. It always seems like a mystery, like writing rooms. I'm always curious what actually happens when you're writing a song with or for Charlie XCX or Camila Cabello. How does it work?
It's a great question. I don't think anyone knows the answer to that question, though. It really varies artist to artist, writer to writer. Some artists love to get on the mic and just sing a bunch of melodies over a track or a, chord loop that they like, and then put lyric to the melody after. And some artists walk in with a concept, I think it's the best when artists are going through something because they walk in fired up being like, this is what I want to say. And that's my favorite way to write a song. I really struggle with the lyric to melody situation. I prefer to walk in with a concept and be like, this is what I think we should say today. And then it all kind of, you find like a sonic guitar part or piano part that fits that mood. But I think every session, at least for me, I still walk in, you could have the biggest song in the world and you'll still get nervous because every time you're starting over.
Right. There always seems a certain kind of magic to it when a song appears, I guess, using inverted quotes. Is there one session in particular that always reminds you that it was just a magical moment?
Yeah, I think those moments are rare. And I think a lot of people don't talk enough about chemistry because there can be writers that have the biggest year of their lives, but, some artists might not connect with them. And that's so fine. And vice versa. And I think it is all about chemistry. I think for me, the first song I ever put out was called Ready Yet?
Yeah.
And it's this really emotional song about my dad. And it was one of the first times I had worked with King Henry, who is now my fiance.
Right.
Cringe, but here we are. I always said I would never date a producer, and now I'm marrying one. But I walked into the session and he had this loop playing, and it was like a broken up ukulele or something. And I was like, oh my God, I love that. And I had just had like a difficult conversation with my dad the night before that, kind of saying, like, let's make our relationship better. And then I said, I'm not ready yet. And I kind of walked into that room with that title and emotion. And it was just one of those moments where the whole song just poured out and the track was perfect for it. And that's definitely one of those moments where I was like, wow, this feels like a thing. Like when you write a great song, everyone in the room knows.
Right.
And you kind of all look at each other and go, this is pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was one of the most like special moments where like, I don't know who was in the room with us, but it just poured out.
And you were like, I'm not giving that to anyone. That's my song. Is that how that went?
Yeah. Yeah. That was the first song I ever wrote that made me feel like, okay, this is, I think, for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I had been waiting for. Because I had written for a long time at that point in sessions just for other people. And I was waiting to find the right collaborators and even just organically trying to find the right sound and the right lyrics and, what I wanted to say and who I wanted to be. And it all kind of started with that session and that song.
It is a very intimate and personal song. What was it like having that to be the first one that you put out as your own sort of solo work?
It was insanely scary.
Yeah.
I think I could kind of hide behind the fact that I think I knew it was very personal, but I think that song can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. So it wasn't as scary lyrically to put out there, but it's just vulnerable putting yourself out there in any way. And, you see a million nice comments and then you read one bad one and it sticks with you for the rest of the day. So yeah. I think it was more exciting at the time though, because I had no idea what I was doing, whereas I get more anxious now.
Do you? So when you put out I Blame the World, is there a level of anxiety associated with putting these thoughts out into the world?
Oh yeah. I think I've developed like not a huge fan base, but I have like a core fan base, which I'm really fortunate to have that. And I don't want to let them down, Right. So when I was just putting music out and I didn't have anyone listening yet, it was kind of like, this is fun. And now I feel like a slight pressure to not deliver, just, make it the best it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first two EPs you released, Sad Girl and Loser, such wonderfully descriptive titles. Were those titles a suggestion of where you were in your life at that point?
Yeah, I have both of those tattooed on me, which I slightly regret in hindsight. And my mom's a free spirit and doesn't care about tattoos, but I got loser tattooed and she was like, don't do that. You're not a loser. So I might get it covered up or get like winner on the other side, whatever, something like that, just to make her happy. But yeah, I feel like, especially coming from the songwriting world, I felt like there was always this pressure to write something really empowering or anthemic. And I've never felt that way ever. Those feelings are not something that come to me naturally. So putting music out it was kind of like being in school again, and like just putting my own music out was more of my outlet again. Yeah. I was like, these are songs that I connect to and I relate with. And I feel like, I don't know. I feel like growing up, like I loved like sad music, Alanis Morissette, Jewel. And I feel like that wasn't at that time, especially wasn't really being represented. And I wasn't trying to represent anything, but I think, just having music that's like, hey, it's okay to not feel like, you're super stoked and you're going to move on after a breakup,
Absolutely.
Just talk about some more emotional things going on. And yeah, I definitely felt like a sad girl. I still do. And I felt like a loser and I still do. So
really, after all your success, but it
worked out.
It's interesting though, because you put that out into the world, people who feel the same way must really have gravitated towards that music, and there must be a very deep connection with your fan base in terms of them seeing someone who is speaking for them, I guess. At what point were you aware that there was that connection? And then did that bring a pressure You spoke earlier about not wanting to let your audience down, but do you feel that now?
Yeah, I think the first time I really saw that connection was when I did my first headline tour. And I was so nervous. I'm so nervous anytime I go on a headline run because it's like I have nightmares of me singing and no one's there. When you're opening, you're like, whatever, I'm not responsible for these tickets. But yeah, I think that's when I really first saw the connection with fans and people knowing, I haven't really had like a hit song as an artist. And I think the special thing about that is I have people at shows singing every single lyric to every single song. And yeah, I mean, I have a hard time not crying every time I'm on stage because it's just so powerful. And I also feel bad that people like come to my show, and I just want to make sure that like I'm doing the best I can. But yeah, I think there really isn't a pressure. I just put it on myself.
Right.
And I've been trying to get better at not doing that. But yeah, I just want to make sure everyone likes it, which is an impossible thing to do.
Sure.
But I think making sure I like it is the best way to do that,
Yeah. Absolutely. Just last couple of things, Sasha, just about playing live. You mentioned open mic nights. Was that your entry into performing when you were, I guess, still back in Boston?
Oh, yeah. I loved open mics. They were so fun.
Really?
There were a ton around me where I grew up. And there was like a good open mic community. And so I just like bring a couple friends and we'd go. And I kind of miss that. I feel like they have that here in Nashville. It's like writers' rounds where everyone will like get up and play a song they've written. And I think it's just cool. And I need to do it more because I think it's really important to see other people playing live.
Sure. It's so interesting you say that because I imagine it would be terrifying going to an open mic night for the first time and getting up there and singing. But you didn't find it that at all?
No, I loved it. Now I find it terrifying.
Wow. Why is that?
I think I had like a lot of like dumb confidence when I was younger in every facet of my life.
Yeah.
I was just down for whatever.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I think it'd be really fun. I absolutely loved it. And it was so fun to like write something and then play it for people.
Yeah. Okay.
And see how people react. And yeah.
You mentioned having seen Brandi Carlile from quite a young age, and I think I also read that Britney Spears was your first ever show. Who are some of the people that you I guess learned from watching and thinking, oh, that's how you do it. Okay.
Brandi Carlile, like I said, amazing performer, has been touring for so long. I think that's something a lot of people don't realize about her is how long she's been at it and how incredible she is live. Like it is truly mind-blowing. Saw Regina Spektor live a lot of times, obsessed with her. I remember seeing her at House of Blues in Boston, and she was just really sitting at the piano the whole time, and you could hear a pin drop in the room. I was like, that's who I want to be.
Right.
Those were the idols that I had. And my grandparents took me to a Leonard Cohen show.
Wow.
And that actually was like insanely inspiring. Just artists who are insanely passionate about what they do. But of course, I love like a good arena show where every song is a hit, Yeah. It's just whatever mood you're in, whatever music you're feeling that day. But yeah, I think, I've been inspired by a lot of different artists and a lot of different genres as I've grown up.
What was the Britney show like? Do you remember it at all?
Yes, I remember it because this was when I was a good student in first grade.
Okay.
I was like an excellent student until third grade. And then I don't know what happened. But I remember I'd never missed my homework before. And I was having so much fun at the Britney Spears concert. She was amazing. All this confetti came down at the end. And then I forgot to do my homework and I got in trouble the next day and it scarred me for life. I guess not for life because I got over it at some point, but yeah, it was incredible. Shows on that scale are always fun.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Leonard Cohen, just last question about live. Leonard, how old were you when you saw Leonard and what was it that struck you so?
Oh God, I can't remember how old I was. I had to have been like 14 or 15. Okay. Don't quote me on that.
Yep.
I was young, but my grandparents were obsessed with Leonard Cohen and they're Irish. So they were always playing Irish folk music around the house. And that's a concert that I was dragged to. I was like, I don't want to go to this. Like, this is stupid. And then I got there and I was like, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And I've been a huge Leonard Cohen fan ever since.
Yeah.
I think I was like a little too young to really get it going in. But coming out, it changed me.
Yeah. Well, we talked about lyrics earlier, and it gets no better than Leonard Cohen in that regard.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sasha, very last thing. Jaxsta is all about giving credit where credit is due. Are there people that you'd give credit to for helping you get where you are today?
Oh, God, the list is so long. My mom, who I've talked a lot about. King Henry, my producer / fiance. Yeah. Cringe yet again. I have to say I've had the most incredible manager since day one. Right after I signed my pub deal, I met him, and we've been working together ever since. And he has been the best manager and the kindest person anyone could ever ask for. So I've been super lucky in that regard. And, you know, my team at RCA, just even friends and family who liked songs along the way, you know, it's just, no one does it alone. And I seriously feel that way. So, yeah.
There's a lot. Sasha, thanks so much.
There's a lot.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. It's been so great chatting to you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been awesome.
And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. A big thanks to Sasha for her time, and thank you for listening. If you have any feedback on the show or suggestions on who you'd like me to interview, or even if you just want to say hello, please drop me a line at humansofmusic@jaxsta.com. That's humansofmusic, one word, at Jaxsta, JAXSTA.com. This episode was mixed by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale, and the incidental music and theme song were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, share it amongst your friends and rate and review it. And remember, next time you need to know who wrote a song, who produced a song, who engineered it, who played on it, who sang on it, who did anything on it, head to jaxsta.com for all your official music credit information. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thanks for listening.